I really want to talk to you today about something I passionately believe, and you might think I'm crazy, but at least give me 10 minutes so that I can share these ideas with you. One of the things I believe is that we've spent the last 20 years getting huge amounts of productivity gains through use of IT, making our processes super sophisticated in a way that people working 15 or 20 years ago can't even imagine how efficient, how well we can do things now, how much we know, how much information we process. You know, an organisation like Cisco knows at the end of every single day what its profit and loss is. Now, once upon a time, organisations couldn't even work that out once a year or struggled to work it out once a year. So we've gone a long, long way. But I think the next 20 years are all about people. We will get similar productivity gains through using our people more efficiently and effectively, engaging their brains in the job, making them happier, more motivated at work. So this is not about making people work harder. It's making people work more productively, more creatively, in a more integrated way than they do at the moment. And to illustrate that, there's a great book by Marshall Goldsmith, who's known as the world's most expensive executive coach. He only works with Fortune 500 CEOs. But Marshall's last but one book was called What Got You Here Won't Get You There. And what he's saying is that a lot of the behaviours that are demonstrated by managers on their way up the ladder are the exact behaviours that stop them getting to the top job or make the top job awful when they get there. They ruin their opportunities in the top job because they've got a whole bunch of learnt behaviours they've got to forget. I want to take that as a metaphor and say that in many organisations, the same with learning. What got you here, what is done for 20, 30, 40, maybe even longer, won't get you to where you need to go and will not take you to those productivity gains and all of those advantages in building a really intense, really exciting learning organisation. Why? Well, for a number of reasons. The first one is a very simple formula by Reg Revans. I think he created that formula in about 1972. This is not brand new and it's not rocket science. What Reg Revans said was that L, learning, equals P, a learning program, plus Q and plus A. Q are questions, A is action. So for him, the real learning is embodied in action emerging from the learning, and the only way you get real learning is to take whatever formal learning you've got, or even informal learning, and build around it interaction, questioning, sharing, partnership. Therefore, learning is not P. And many, many organisations still think that the bigger the program, the number of programs they run, equals intense or greater or more impressive learning. It's not true. It's learning equals P plus Q. Therefore, I believe very, very straightforwardly that the future is about conversation. It's about collaboration collectively. So if you want, I'm seeing the future, and the future is about organising more intelligent collaboration between staff, better quality conversations, whether they're face-to-face or they're online. All of this requires doing things differently, thinking about things in a different way. For far too long, we've worried about what people know. And then when we stop worrying too much about what they know, we spent a fortune panicking about what they can do. And that's where the whole competence movement comes from. The problem is, I can't differentiate between the competence levels in two completely different organisations. And yet one performs unbelievably brilliantly and one is kind of okay and mediocre. We've got to get beyond knowing, beyond doing, into the realm of behaviour. It's about being. And the only way learning turns to effective action is when people believe and behave in particular ways. Just to be able to do something doesn't mean you're going to do it when someone's back is turned. Just because you can demonstrate it in the classroom doesn't mean that you will practice that when you get back to your team and your colleagues. So we need a radical focus on behaviour, and we judge the impact of learning by what people are actually doing differently in the workplace, in context, and not what they can prove on paper or demonstrate in some kind of assessment environment. Being is really important. And in order to make that really rich and make that work, I think we have to say that having a work team, collaborating with your work team, being an effective team player is just one thing only. The second is to share your expertise in some kind of community of practice. In other words, share your expertise across the organisation, not just in your slice, or worse, your silo. But even that's not enough. You've really got to encourage people to build external networks and not punish them for developing external networks, not seeing them as being disloyal or wasting time when they go to those external networks. Because a great organisation, one that survives, one that thrives, one that loves learning, is an organisation that shamelessly brings new ideas in from outside and in return shares existing ideas outside. So it's about taking down the tariff barriers around knowledge and sharing knowledge as much as it's possible to share knowledge, and encouraging people to do that, reward them doing that, and also give them some recognition around doing that. So what I'm saying is that any kind of learning focus in your organisation should be perhaps formal in classroom or e-learning or whatever it is, but wrapped around that is some kind of knowledge sharing, however that's organised, and some sort of social learning, whether it's through a social network or just permission to talk, permission to discuss, permission to move outside the work team. If you do that, they're my three magical ingredients that come together and cause a learning explosion. And you can see that learning explosion occurring in organisations all over the world. In the last 6 months, I've worked in Brazil, I've worked in the US, I've worked in mainland Europe as well as the UK. And in every place, there are some really depressing examples of the way learning either doesn't exist or it's used in a very, very narrow way. But balancing those examples are real insights into the way the future is going. And the payback for the organisation is nothing to do with just happy staff walking around with a smile, although that should be payback. It's to do with increases in productivity. People giving what I call discretionary effort. In other words, people do things that are not on their job description. They go the extra mile for the customer. They make a point of collaborating and showing. They act as informal coaches and mentors for their colleagues without expecting recompense or expecting to be ordered to do it or filling in a form. It's just the way they do things. And that engagement around learning is exciting. It makes the organisation appear dynamic. It makes the organisation appear like it's going forward, that it's got a future. And all of that is tied around learning. So the last picture that you can see on the screen now is a mural I love. It's from Cable Street in the East End of London. And what it illustrates is this moment in the 30s when the community of Cable Street, mostly a Jewish community, but also the Labour Party and I suppose the Communist Party, all came together and they said, these fascists are not going to march down our street. And there was this pitched battle, and those fascists, led by Mosley, did not walk down Cable Street. And what I want you to think about is not encouraging everyone to have a punch-up in your organisation, but try to get at the spirit of that community that came together on those days and said, we believe so much in our community and our organisation and our structure that we will defend it to the ends of the earth. And if you can get some of that in your organisation, where you've got your staff as advocates, your staff who really believe in what you're doing, are entirely motivated to work with you and for you, I think that you've got the beginnings of a 21st century organisation. But what I also believe is that learning has to be, almost by definition, at the very heart of that. Thanks very much.